This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television.
We truly enjoy working with the Chamber of Commerce here in North Haven, and I love the fact that we have such a close relationship, and I'm truly grateful to all of the businesses that are part of our local chamber. You really make it happen for the Chamber, and you make it happen for us in North Haven. I'd like to thank the sponsors for today's luncheon. Ciula and D'Onofrio and Jennifer, thank you for being here. We truly enjoy working with this wonderful firm. And of course, North Haven Funeral Home, the wonderful family of Brian Havens. And Phyllis and I, by the way, we are working and competing in Dancing Under the Stars this year to benefit the Ronald McDonald House. And I have to say that I happened to see her a couple of times as we have been training, and I think she's the odds-on favorite to win, Phyllis. You really are. So, I'm very grateful to be here, and I'm grateful to be the first selectman in North Haven. And I'd like to share with you a little bit about North Haven. North Haven, in my mind, is a story in three parts, three separate parts. The first part of the story is the past 3 years here in North Haven. These past 3 years, we've had, I'd like to think, a small degree of success. For the past 3 years, we've been able to deliver 3 consecutive surpluses at a time when many governments have been running deficits. The surpluses have been generated through really the efforts of many of the town departments who have embraced the philosophy of just because we have $85 million to spend, that doesn't mean we have to spend $85 million. And what that means is many of the departments continue to come in under budget. And we've been able to create surpluses in 3 consecutive years as a result of having departments come in under budget and looking internally for operational efficiencies, and we've been able to streamline a lot of the government systems and procedures through greater efficiencies, which have resulted in cost savings. These are the things that we do every day in our business careers and the things that we used to do in my corporate career. So part one of the story also includes a degree of economic development success in the past 3 years. It hasn't been easy, and there's still some challenges that I'll get to in a few moments. What we're seeing is the economic development over the 3 years starting to kick in, and the manifestation of that, I believe, will continue to proliferate in upcoming fiscal years. We've brought in new restaurants. We've brought in new businesses. We have a hustle and bustle of activity on Universal Drive, populating vacant spaces there. We have worked closely with Quinnipiac University and also Yale New Haven Hospital. In fact, next week on February 28th, that day we will have a grand opening of the Yale New Haven Hospital here in North Haven. And I'll comment on what this means in a little while. So part one of the story is a story that includes some success but remaining challenges. Part two of the story is where we are right now as we approach this fiscal year, which starts July 1st. We are faced with unprecedented challenges here in North Haven and throughout the state of Connecticut at the local level. There's a large degree of uncertainty with the state budget. Christine referenced that in her remarks a few moments ago. We know that our level of state aid, at least for this year, appears to remain the same. For North Haven, we're not totally reliant on state aid. It represents roughly 8%, 8.5% of our overall revenue model. Unlike some of the other cities, some of them have 30 to 40% of their revenue that's attributable to reimbursements from the state. There's a shifting this coming year in our state aid. Some of the line items are down. The pilot reimbursement is less. There is no more reimbursement for state-owned property, and these will have an impact on us, although we did get an increase in certain areas like LOCIP, which is Local Capital Improvement Programming. But North Haven would have been short $1.1 million in state revenue if it wasn't for what's called a hold harmless grant. So the state, at least for this fiscal year, this coming fiscal year, is giving us this $1.1 million to make it equal for us, so we will be getting $5.6 million in state aid. But the Hold Harmless grant doesn't necessarily mean it's going to continue to happen every year. So we see this large degree of uncertainty. If we were to do a SWOT analysis on North Haven, Connecticut, and this is one of the tools that many of you probably utilize in your own business, what we used to do in our corporate career, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, I see the threat category as an emerging populated quadrant in the SWOT analysis. And we have many wonderful Grand List members and businesses here in North Haven who pay taxes, but yet there's so much pressure on the businesses from a taxation standpoint. And one of the things that we can't control is a high energy cost format that really hurts our businesses in town. And so in the threat category, we see these emerging trends of pressure on businesses. And in the threat category, we see the emerging trends of taxation threats on residents, as we have to make up this revenue loss somehow. So as we approach this coming fiscal year, I see dark and turbulent waters that we're going to have to navigate through as a town. And this is the same for many, many towns throughout the state. Part of the dilemma is a dilemma that I was faced with in my corporate career, and I'm sure that many of you are faced with today. When you have years where the revenue is flat, but you have rising costs that you have to absorb somehow, it puts a tremendous amount of pressure on any institution to figure a way out how to deal with that. Now, in my business career, one of the ways to deal with that was a reduction in services. But yet, many of the clients didn't like that because they wanted the same level of services. In government, it's kind of a similar analogy. We have been reluctant to decrease the level of services in North Haven as the revenue model is flat in a given fiscal year. We pride ourselves on the services that we offer, and we will continue to offer those services. But we're faced with a year that we have the uncertainty at the state level. We have a year where the Grand List, although it grew through the offsets and through the conversion of fully taxable property to a pilot reimbursement from the state, which is now going to be reduced, we have to make up this revenue somehow. And that's the challenge today. How are we going to negotiate and navigate through the turbulent waters of this next fiscal year that's coming? But part 3 of the story is that in the distance, which can be described as the fiscal year ending or starting July 1st, 2014, ending in 2015 and beyond, as we navigate through these murky waters, there is a bright and shining beacon of light that I see that represents the future of North Haven. And that future is going to be defined by changing the way we do business in many areas. And I'll give you a specific example. We in North Haven pay roughly $67.71 a ton to deposit our waste in Wallingford. We have continued to be bullish on single stream recycling, which at one time during the 3 years I've been here represented a cost of $36 a ton, roughly. So every ton of waste that turns into recyclables, we were saving roughly $30 a ton. But through the efforts of our people here in North Haven, our Public Works Director, our Director of Finance, Ed Swinkowski, and others, and I've been part of many of these meetings myself, we are now moving from a model where we were paying to deposit our recyclables to now getting paid in the future for the value of those recyclables. So what we're trying to accomplish in North Haven is taking line item expenses that have been in past fiscal years and turning certain lines into revenue producing lines. And recyclables is a good example of that. And we've taken it to a different level too. We have a wonderful business in town, Sarah, and Sarah is on Washington Avenue. They recently received a $15,000 grant from Alcoa. They came to us recognizing that we are trying to be on the leading edge of recyclables. And through this grant with Alcoa, we're working with Jim Lamb, who's here today, and through this grant, we are going to be the recipients of 5 large recyclable bins that we're going to be putting on the town green, at baseball fields, and in other areas throughout the town. And what that'll do is encourage and create a greater level of awareness for recycling at those public events. And this is a good example where we're trying to help the business also, because the business gets 5 cents for every can or bottle, and they help employ people, disabled people with disabilities, to work in various parts of the town or various businesses. So we're trying to create a new model that saves the town money, makes the town money, but also helps support an existing business. When we look at part 3 and we visualize that bright and shining beacon of light as we navigate through these waters, that light also is defined by the fact that we have not only wonderful businesses here in town, some of whom are currently looking to expand, but as North Haven changes from a farming community to a manufacturing community years ago, to a community that now will end up hosting 2 of the leading institutions in the United States, Quinnipiac University and Yale New Haven Hospital. These are 2 institutions, education and medical services, that there's no doubt in my mind, both of whom will be an incendiary spark to create incremental business development and economic activity here in town. And Quinnipiac University, as they mobilize for the first matriculation in their medical school this coming October, we've already seen some of the byproducts of that with a fully taxable mixed-use development that's going to be happening on the site of the old Daddy-O Farms location. We're also talking to developers about other mixed-use projects on the west side of northern Washington Avenue that'll go before planning and zoning. There's a good example of how that will spark incremental economic development. In the case of Yale New Haven Hospital on Devine Street, because of that coming, we were able to work with a developer to create 3 new medical buildings in town to provide wonderful services for the future, all of whom will produce tax revenue for the town. And very shortly before planning and zoning, there will be a project that will be a 55 and over facility that will be on the site of the old Nissan dealership there, roughly 135 units that will be situated right there in the middle of just about every imaginable service, medical service that anyone could ever need here in town. And this would be fully taxable. Part of the challenge here for the future, in my case as the chief elected official of North Haven, but I'm sure it's the same everywhere, is also dealing with multiple emerging demographics. And in North Haven we have demographics 55 to 65 that I talk to that are looking to find locations to downsize, 65 to 75, the more active, affluent seniors who are looking to move out of their homes and move into some type of a nice facility. And then there's 75 and over, the income-sensitive seniors who really need to get out of their homes, but there's very few locations for them to go because they're income restricted, and the income restricted facilities that we have in town, the waiting lists are 2 years, so they can't get on the waiting list. So I'm trying to identify solutions for all of these multiple demographics, because in my mind, we don't need new subdevelopments in town. We need to create a solution that encourages seniors to move out of their homes because they want to move out of their homes, but also provide destinations so that we open up inventory to attract new families into the inventory that we have. So there's no question in my mind that although this fiscal year is going to be incredibly difficult, that the future is incredibly bright. And I want each and every one of you to know, I'd like you to know, that this government loves challenges, embraces challenges, and the energy levels of this government continue to manifest themselves the tougher it becomes and the more challenges there are. And that's my commitment to each and every one of you. that we will continue to work towards striving to do the right thing for North Haven. Sometimes it's difficult, and one of the things I've learned in this profession is that it's difficult to please everybody. And I must admit, I do try to please everybody, but sometimes I fail to do that because I just can't solve every single problem. And I apologize to those who I haven't pleased. But I am firmly committed to a direction in North Haven that continues to retain our small town charm, that continues to move the town forward in a very robust, vibrant fashion when it comes to economic development, that continues to embrace and work with our businesses when they need help, and work with the citizens of North Haven to try to help them from a customer service standpoint. Government, in many respects, is very similar to business. We have clients. In my mind, the clients of North Haven are the businesses. We have customers. In my mind, the customers of North Haven are the tax-paying citizens who require services. And we have a balance sheet like we have in business. The one difference is, or there's actually two differences. One of the differences is that in our business careers, if we were to receive a new business or a new client, it has immediate impact in that fiscal year. In government, we're always working a year behind. So anything we do today doesn't count for this coming fiscal year. And the second difference is that as chief elected officials, and we talk about this all the time, that a lot of times things roll uphill into our office. And we get a lot of the questions and the problems and the dilemmas. But ironically, although that's a big difference in this career versus my other career, as my staff knows that the energy levels just continue to multiply despite the level of problems. Somewhere along the line that may change, but I can tell you it won't change in the foreseeable future. You know, I really enjoy being here. I really enjoy having these heart-to-heart discussions with you to give you a little bit of an overview as to what's happening here in North Haven. And as Robin mentioned, I would certainly entertain any questions. But before we open it up, I'd like to say it's a great privilege, honor, and joy to be the chief elected official, first selectman of North Haven. Thank you very, very much. Okay, I'd like to open up. Yes, sir.
I'm very interested about this Yale New Haven Hospital facility. Given that it's a hospital, I imagine it's an inpatient facility. Is it new or remodeled buildings, and how many employees will there be, and when will it be populated?
The question for those watching on North Haven TV was about the Yale New Haven Hospital project on Devine Street, what type of facility it is, how many employees. So let me tell you that the total employee population there will be over 400. The services that will start in this facility will be a Smilo Cancer Care Center, an inflammatory disease center, an infectious disease center. There'll be a blood work giant urgent care center. There'll be a pharmacology aspect there, an IT department, and also an MRI X-ray imaging facility there. It will not be an emergency room concept to start. We were denied that certificate of need about a year and a half ago, so we decided to focus in on everything that we knew Yale New Haven Hospital could accomplish without requiring state approval. So what you'll see there is a building that's a retrofitted building, sir, of the old ATT building on Devine Street, roughly 122,000 square feet. And that's what we'll be opening up on February 28th. Do you have any other questions, sir, on that? You're welcome. Okay. Any other questions? Can I ask you a question? I'm a little concerned being a Yankee fan. You know, I'm old enough to remember, even though I was a young kid, the transition from the 1964 New York Yankees, who were beaten in the World Series by the St. Louis Cardinals. I think I was in the 5th grade. And the following year, even though Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris and Whitey Ford were still on the team, the hopes were high. But what I didn't realize as a young kid was that the age factor was going to set in. Now here we are in 2013, and I have the same feeling about the Yankees that I had, or that I learned when I was a kid, that I don't know if this is going to be a good year. Now, forgive me, Red Sox fans, I admit I am a Yankee fan. How do you see it? Do you think there's a chance that the Yankees could win the World Series this year?
They have a chance because there's a Democratic president. The last time they won with a Republican president was 1958.
Now, there's a man that knows his facts. This gentleman, for those that didn't hear him, said that they have a chance with a Democratic president. The last time the Yankees won was with 1958 with a Republican president, right? Correct. So, thank you, sir, for that.
Vote for Bush, vote for Reagan, vote for Nixon.
Well,
They won with Clinton and Obama and Kennedy.
it's a man that knows his trivia, folks. Any other questions? Yes, sir, Mr. Khan.
What we are doing in Monterey's section is, like Riot Aid went 2-3 years ago.
Yes.
The building is empty and certain part of the, and myself, state doesn't give any increases, and Medicare cutting down, and we have quite many of the insurance cases, they are also cutting down, and what we are doing, everybody is trying to do it, and our revenues are not increasing, and as you tell, our insurance increasing beyond, and 2014 will be much more, because we have to pay at least 30 hours to every employee. Right now we pay full-time employees 40 hours.
So for those that don't know, Mr. Khan and his family own the Montewies Rehabilitation Facility in the Montewies section of town. They've done a wonderful job with that facility. And his question is, what would we be doing in the Montewies area of town? There's a Rite Aid that basically is across the street from that facility that went out of business many years ago. And it's a very good question, Mr. Khan, it really is. The Montewies district in town is one of the oldest districts. And it's a district that still has a lot of seniors who live there. And the Montewies district has been a challenge for two reasons. The old gas station on the corner, the gateway leading into North Haven, that has been unoccupied for years. Haven't been happy about that because it's an aesthetically unpleasing issue also. And then that Rite Aid there, which we have yet been able to find a tenant for. I think if there's any good news is that we're working with the owner of that gas station. We've had meetings in my office with the DECD. We have a brownfields proposal in place to help clean up the underground there. And I think that's kind of the first step there. I'd love to see that whole, if I can use the V illustration, when you come in going up Route 17 or going towards Quinnipiac Avenue, I'd love to see that whole area kind of improve down through the years. We're working to try to find a tenant for Rite Aid. It hasn't been easy. We tried, even a Dunkin' Donuts was interested to go there, but there's no drive-through there. And then what I learned about that is Dunkin' Donuts has certain restrictions geographically, and they thought that that location would not work because it was too close to the one on Route 80. And I didn't quite understand that because I think there's enough separation there. So it remains a challenge. Now, what we have been able to accomplish, even in a tough situation, is finding a solution for when you come off exit 9, Mr. Khan. On the right-hand side was that old house that had been there that was dilapidated for years. And for those who know where I'm talking about, if you drive by there, you'll see a new little business district being built there. And I think that'll be very good. New businesses going in there, new taxable revenue coming in for the town, and basically what it does is it polishes up a blight issue that's been there for years. So there's no question, sir, that Montewies, there's a lot more work to do, and I appreciate your question on that.
Another question I have, the access ambulance and, we are moving, we bought a facility in Stratford, most probably in a year and a half. Majority of them will be moving their headquarters. Headquarters is 208 Quinnipiac Avenue. So they will be moving the headquarters and maybe renting a small place or someplace else. and that's going to be happening year and a half.
Year and a half, 18 months. Mm-hmm.
That building is, you know, a new building is 5,000 square feet, and front, I don't know exactly square feet, so I think it's going to be empty, what you're going to do there, you know.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mr. Khan is referring to a building that will be empty in 18 months, and he's suggesting that we consider this as a area that we're going to have to try to find a tenant for. So I think that's another very good point. Very good point. You know, I'd like to share with you that one thing I didn't mention is Northern Washington Avenue. I just referenced it briefly, but part of the successful future in North Haven will be the announcement that you saw on a large industrial park that'll be built on the old Pratt Whitney site. And that press release went out from ORNL. And what you're going to see there, it won't happen overnight, but what you'll see there over the next 7 years is a gradual emergence of a giant industrial park, which I think will be great for the town. So I think that's good news for the future also. Okay, are there any other questions? Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your attention, and thank you for being here today.